Hello, nerds. Today we're going to be talking about non-metallic metal gold using a 6-color workup that starts with dark yellow green, uses some dark purple and orange oxide to give some good undertones, moves into orange brown and bright yellow ochre for the base of the gold, and then finishes out with a shine with some bright pale yellow. These are going to give you a great amount of depth and really make you happy with your metal at the end of this stage. Starting with dark yellow green, just to get all of the gold outlined so I can see everything on the model that's supposed to be it. So I'll use an identifying color, so to speak, with the dark yellow green. We'll base it, it'll make it bright. It will not be the right color to start with. If you want to start from shadow, I would start with the dark purple, but I'm going to paint everything first with this. I'm not going to worry about the sword right now, believe it or not, because I'm handling this area a lot down here where it will be gold. And I know I'm going to as I'm painting the lion. So I'll be rubbing a lot of paint off. You can already see where I'm rubbing primer off. So I'll be rubbing that off. So I'm not going to paint that, which I'm not going to paint this part either, just because, I mean, I guess I could. But I'll wait and do the whole sword on its own. I might choose at that point to do it a different yellow metal, more bronzy on the sword hilt than gold on the armor. You know, I can imagine they don't make them out of the same metal. That's where my brain kicks in, and the realism part of it happens, is that if you paint everything the exact same combination of paints and method of painting, they look like they're made of the exact same material. And if you're doing like a red robe, red armor, red boots, right? They're not all the same material. The robe may be silk, the armor may be metal, the boots may be leather. So all those reds would be different because there's no way to dye all of those materials and have them look the same. There's just no way to do that. You can use the same color dye on all of them, but because of the material and the way it reacts with the color, they'll all look differently. So sometimes picking a different way of doing gold on one part of the model versus the next is good, whether you're using metallic paints or not. Always a good way to look at it. I'm just going to paint shadow. There's a bunch of complex shapes on this legally distinct tiger, lion, liger thing. So I'm just going to kind of come in here and really quick pick up a lot of the spots where I think I might want to have some dark reflections.
This is dark purple?
Dark purple. And I'm doing it this way just so I can be messy. I know neither of these colors are going to be representative on the model at big, high levels at the end. So I could have done this dark purple first and then the green over the top, but then I would have had to have painted all these details pretty specifically with the green, and I'm not trying to spend that time on it, right? So again, just get in here and real quick do some areas where we know there would be darker reflections inside of the mouth, underside of everything kind of thing. Top green, bottom purple kind of mentality here. That's pretty good. You know what I think I'm going to do now? I think what I'm going to do now before we leave, just to even do it worse, is I'm going to dry brush this with orange oxide. This shape on the shoulder especially is perfect for dry brushing. So get your brush loaded up with your paint, and then put your paint on paper towel. There you go. Boom. I think the dry brush, while being a great idea, is not going to work because I can't do the other parts this way. So, because I think about it after. I'm gonna get paint all over my black armor. So, I'll only do it on this part. For this, it's the best anyway because it's going to catch all those details. And then when I go back and line the rest of it, I would have liked to have been able to do it on the front collar too. I just don't think I can. Maybe with a small dry brush, but I'm too worried about getting orange all over his beard and stuff like that. So, but I'll be using orange oxide. I would use something like orange oxide. Burnt orange would work well. Burnt sienna would be too dark here to go up against the dark purple. So orange, something a little bit brighter palette. So orange oxide it is. And it allows us to then start framing in the undertones for the gold in the green and the orange. I really like this for gold. It winds up being a really great combo, especially then with the dark purple. The dark purple will be the part that shows through the least and will look more like a brown or black shadow at the end. Really nice to pull. So when you're doing this, you're wanting to make the orange move into the spots towards your highlight. You'll cover each of these layers up as you go. So you're going to want to make sure that you leave enough of the green and enough of the purple showing to have it be worth having done it. And then same when we move into like yellow ochre will be my next color. And the yellow ochre will want to leave enough of the orange showing. And by doing so, we'll also leave enough of the green and the purple because the orange doesn't cover all of them. So yeah, the dry brush was cool, but probably not worth... I don't know. It gave me a good head start on most of this
Yeah,
stuff.
I was just about to say, I think on this part...
It gave me a really good head start because I'm only having to do like wispy. It actually gave me the blend between it and the purple, right?
Yeah.
So it actually does have a pretty high value here on all these shapes to make it quick to now just kind of go through and slam some orange into the raised areas. And again, you can be kind of messy here. That's the whole point with all of this. This is technically underpainting. Yeah, this actually works really well because the dry brush doesn't give me the full intensity of the orange. So then I can come back and build the orange up where I want it to be. It's brightest on the high spots. And in the mid-tones where the dry brush poked in there, it'll still have enough of a presence, but won't be too vibrant. And so you can see how the dry brush, we did the whole thing in the dark yellow green like the rest of these base pieces. Then we put the dark purple just really haphazardly, right? You saw how much I just kind of smacked the brush around because I knew I was going to put the orange over the top and the orange would blend and make all that make sense. So now we have that purple in the deepest shadows, the green in the in-between, and the orange starts moving us towards our warm highlights of gold where the yellows will go. And the green kind of sits in the middle with the purple, and we'll redefine those as we go along. But it gives me a good kind of very artsy-fartsy basis for how the gold will look. Now we'll start painting the real colors over it. We'll start glazing with yellow ochre, then we'll move into like warm yellow, and then pale yellow or bright pale yellow, and then we'll have gold. I got to pick where I want to go with the yellows over this orange base, right? So I'm a big fan of things that move into like yellow ochre. But I also have this really cool color from Flame On set called Orange Brown. And I think I'm going to do Orange Brown over the orange and play with it. I have not done this workup before, but I think we're going to play with that first. I think I want to keep it away. So normally, I brought that Space Marine out here, so that's good. When I'm painting fast, non-metallic gold, I started this guy with the same dark yellow-green that I used on here. But here I went with purples and orange. Here was just dark yellow-green into yellow ochre and then into pale yellow mixed with the yellow ochre. That's it, right? So that's 3 colors that give you all the non-metallic on this guy. And it looks great at a small scale like this. It makes the gold look slightly tarnished, but still gives you the ability to pull off the metallic. I really love the way like this plate on his shoulder has turned out, right? It looks like a tarnished gold plate. So, you know, that's fantastic. At small scale, works great, gives me everything I need. At large scale, it starts to be a little bland. because it exposes the fact that there's not a lot of color nuance to it. So when I go to larger things like bust, or I have bigger surfaces to work with on even a small model, I'm going to want more color, because I want to make it feel... Metal is one of those things that as you start putting it in an environment, colors you would never think start showing up in the metal, because it could be the well, in the grim dark nature of 40K, right, or 52K for Tiger L. Anthony here. I think we said it was 42K, but I like 52K better. But it's 52K. You know, in that world, in a blown out environment, you might get grays and reds from the sun being filtered through this blown out environment and all of that would never appear on gold and other things. So you have this way of being able to play with color, but the fact that it's there, you know, gives you more depth, makes it more interesting, and so I like to play a lot, right? That's why I like purple on this, because we chose dark purple as a shadow for the normal armor color, so using the purple on the gold makes sense to me. And now we're going to go with orange brown, which is a great workup from the orange oxide. They feel like they're in the same world, right? You look at that. That's a really good combo. And now, again, just with a bigger brush, I'm just going to start catching edges here. Not worried about blending, but I am going to be worried more about where the paint goes. Right? I don't want to get it too far into the shadows, so I'm going to be looking at painting the top surfaces first, where I know I'm going to have more of my gold coloring. So I'll overtake some areas entirely. Some of the orange I'll paint over most all of it. The yellow ochre would have been a little too yellow, I think. You got to have been here for a long time to really think ahead on when I'm painting. A lot of people are always blown away by the fact that you started with this thing that looked like a clown suit. How did you make it look like a finished piece of work at the end? And the non-metallic that we're working up here is a little bit more believable, but still to go from purple, green, and orange up to gold is something that takes a suspension of disbelief for a little bit of your painting journey. You're going to have faith in yourself and the process in order to get there. But it really does work. As I run out of paint on the brush, I will start using it more as a glaze. One of the cool ways to utilize your paintbrush is that understanding it won't deliver as much paint as it runs out. Ta-da! And that you can use that to have a little bit more translucence off of the brush. So these broader areas where I know I'm not going to get big splooches of paint now that I'm lower in material on the brush, I can do some glazing without having to thin the paint down. I see a lot of people in my years that give up on their non-metallic metal when they're at the halfway point because it doesn't look right. And they're looking at the thing on Instagram that looks brilliant, you know, and theirs doesn't look that way. And it's like, well, it would if you just hang tight for a second, make that next crucial step to that next bright color, and all of a sudden, bang, the world comes to life. So never give up. It's always that course of steps in between that give the model its real life. You know, now here I just have to be careful not to overtake my shadows. So I got to leave my oranges, greens, and purples in the shadows and find a way to pull each brush stroke of this yellow, although it's orange-brown, out of the shadows. So I'll start in my dark spot, bring the brush up along, and then leave more color up here along the top of these folds in the design where the light would be hitting more, and then go back to just light edging in the shadows here, because I will with metallics have a reflective edge on surfaces that are even going down into the shadows a lot of time, because that sharp edge will catch the light. This part is what I call sketching. You're trying to find your way around the model, trying to figure out what works for you. I'm still not at my bright colors, so I don't want to start being too punchy with my placement of highlights, but I am thinking about it. I am thinking about where the brighter colors are going to live and making sure that this color goes there. So now I got to start thinking. I want to have more reflected shadow and darkness on this side, but I still have to find brightness too. So I'll spend more time with the edge highlighting on this side. These colors look very warm and muddy right now. Muddy, probably not the right word, but warm and dirty, gritty, because of the oranges, the greens, the purples, all working together here. Believe it or not, the next couple of colors will make these kind of drift into obscurity, because as we start going into bright into the spectrum on our non-metallics, all of these become kind of second fiddle. The bright colors will take over visually, and these colors will have to start fighting for their life to even be seen by the time we get done. Be deliberate as you underpaint for your non-metallics. Make sure you have enough of these visible. It'll take some practice on your part before you get to the point where you understand like what will survive a brighter color and what won't. Just a very painterly application of paint here. It sounds funny to say that. It's like, duh, you're painting. Of course it's painterly. But by painterly, I mean just a little bit more wispy brushstroke. Not really as concerned with any blending or perfection of anything other than color placement. I just am trying to get the color to go where I want it to go right now. The yellow family of browns are going to always give you a lot more flexibility in their opacity, right? Act a little bit like yellows, so they're not going to be truly opaque on the first brushstroke, and that's really helpful when doing stuff like non-metallic gold. I don't want them to cover 100% of my colors underneath. I want them to let some of these other dirty colors show through. The way we tie it all together is with the next stage, which will be the bright colors that start defining the shine and such. Those will start to drive the picture home, so to speak. Remember that edges, even in the darkest recesses, will grab a little light from the environment, so we don't have to worry about that. We can pull that whole edge down into the bottom, but not do a lot of surface color there. Just worry about the edge. That may be the only brightness that stays down there that survives as we continue to push this non-metallic work up. Golden brown, bright yellow ochre.
Ooh, yeah, both of those are great.
Right. The golden brown is going to be a little bit darker, less yellow. The bright yellow ochre is going to take you to yellow. The bright yellow ochre is what we're going to be using next, because I want to start shifting towards the reflective quality of my light. So I won't be using the golden brown I was using in his hair. So the golden brown is like the color that we've got going on in his beard and hair right now. That's dark golden brown and golden brown. Now we're going to go to bright gold, or the bright yellow ochre. So you can see how bright this color is going to be, starting to have to show my reflection. I can still control this by diluting it to where I've got, a more thinned version of it. And then pile it on where I need the brightness. I'm doing that every stage. It's just kind of the way I paint. The first time I'm touching the model with a particular color, I'm typically doing that with more dilution, so it's less intense. So I'm feeling out how that color is going to look. And then as I like it, as I get it where I want it, then I start diluting it less and getting more of the impact of the color. Locking in my reflections is going to be the key. Finding the spots on each of these shapes where the light would be the most intense. So I've been feeling out each shape as I was painting the base coat colors, even from the purple. And now I'm like, okay, so like right here on this eyebrow, right? This upper edge is going to be bright, coming into this kind of cylindrical shine right here along the brow. And then catch the bottom line again a little bit and this lower edge, right? Because it has this leaf shape to it almost. It's convex, or I'm sorry, concave. So that'll define that one shape. And then I have to look at the shape next to it and say, okay, well, this one has a cylinder shape the other direction, so its shine will kind of go left to right instead of top to bottom. I'm just trying to catch edges and bright spots right now. Complex shapes will have more shine on them than that, so I'll have to blend back into like midtones and such as I go. But right now I'm just looking to catch the edge. And then once I have that edge defined, like right here on this nose and cheek area, right? Yep. Then I know that on this spot on the nose, I've got a shine that'll come across right here. And then that same shine will carry on to this area of the side of the nose. And then over here on this one, up here, you know, you can just kind of go around and sketch like where are my shine spots going to be based on this light direction I've created. And then you just sketch those in. This is where it's like, oh, now I can kind of get where we're going. This still isn't our brightest color, so it's not going to tell the whole story, but it's going to get us going. And this is that jump that most people are afraid to make. You have to go from a mid-tone or dark color into a much brighter color, something that isn't just one value stage brighter, something that's multiple stages brighter to really pull this off. Because what happens is that the reflected light on a shiny object blows out a lot of the color of that object. Go look at a car in the sun, right? One of the things you'll notice is that most of it is the color of the light that it's reflecting rather than the color of the body of the car, right? Like a shiny black car, most of it when you're looking at it is not black. Most of it is the color of the light it's reflecting, like the sun. So it's this yellow-white reflection that's telling you how shiny the car is, and then the spots of black you see are telling you it's black, right? You could walk up to that car and look at it in the dark, and it could be purple, right? But the light and the way it's reflecting off of it has gotten rid of all that color because the eye is seeing all the contrast provided by the light. So the light washes out the colors from the point of impact, wrong word, but the point of incidence where the light hits the car and reflects back to your eye. Everything, depending on how shiny the surface is and how diffuse that light gets when it hits it, starts to eliminate color in a radial form outward from that where that light ray hit it, right? And so you lose color. So the car won't be blue and then a pinpoint of light. It'll be that pinpoint of bright white light. Then it'll start becoming diffuse as it goes over. And then blue will start happening as you get further away from your source of light. And so that's what we have to create here. And in order to do that, we have to have those dark colors run into our very bright colors, because the bright colors are getting rid of the ability to see all of the other color in between. That's why you don't have even blends from my bright color back down towards my dark one. Hopefully that makes some sense to you, gang. I didn't put a lot of brightness here, so I can't over brighten this shoulder, which is why I've thrown this shoulder into darkness on the gold very quickly too, right? Because my plan is that it'll be more like this area is where I'm thinking we'll have light. And we'll play with it as we build it up. Let the model kind of become what it wants to be, rather than forcing it early on. If you've built light onto an object, and there's another object that would reflect light similarly right next to it, you need to carry that reflection angle into both pieces being very similar. You can't just choose to not have one lead to the other. The human brain, like I said earlier, whether you know the words to convey that correctly or not, it won't make sense to you. You'll look at it and be like, something feels off. I don't know how to tell you what feels off, but something feels off. And that's what we're trying to avoid. Remember that what we're talking about in the realm of reality is that there's an environment this model is in where the light will only hit, like, let's say the light's coming from this direction. It'll only hit this side of this lion, but the light will go past and hit the stuff behind him and bounce back. So remember, there's always going to be some form of reflection on this bottom side over here. And you could choose to highlight the bottom edges over here instead of the top edges, right? That make it feel like in the dark side of the model, you know, I've got more of the reflective light is coming from the ground or the environment. But I'm always going to catch these edges even on the dark side, if that's what you're asking. Because like that's going to give me the feel of metal still just by making that edge sharp and then putting that in contrast with that, now you understand which side is the reflective side and which side's in shadow. But even the shadow is going to have those points, you know, catch whatever little light is there and reflect it. So you still need to pay attention to the backside, because those sharp, if it has sharp edges. If it's just a smooth surface, you might take like a mid-tone color and make a radial highlight or an extra highlight on it, like I did like on the back side of the cylinder of the arm there. See how that's much deeper color? Because that's like the reflection of the chest reflecting into the arm, not the direct light. Direct light is here, right? Secondary light reflection might be there or under here, you know, to where you can get different levels of brightness to your reflections to show that they're more in the distance or secondary, tertiary, things like that. And this is all just looking, like I said earlier, looking at each one of these and saying, okay, if my light is right here, how does it affect each one of these different spots? I have all these fins coming out here, so they're going to be bright on the side that faces the light. Well, even these, as they go back, have some facing that light, so I've got to keep that going, right? And then start removing it as I go around the other side. They're like fan blades, the hair on the head there, right? I probably need a little brightness on this cheek because it puffs out above all this, so it would get a little bit of shine. It wouldn't be that dark. So again, we'll use the bright yellow ochre here to really dial in our shine spots. And you'll notice how I'll even take it into those dark shadow areas to catch some edges. And it may be the brightest thing we use there, but we'll want to balance it out across all of these surfaces. You'll want to keep in mind all the things we've talked about with regard to direction of light, so continue to make sure you look and turn the model to face your light source, pretend your eyeball is the sun, and that'll let you see the spots where the brighter colors need to live. Just kind of touching up before I move to the bright color. I'm probably spending more time thinking about it than I should. I'm ready to move to a brighter color so I can show off what this looks like as we actually start making the shine up here. This is the point where I generally skip ahead too fast because I get excited. I'm still a kid at heart when it comes to painting. I love the finish line sometimes on these processes. You got to remember that it's going to take you some time to get there. So now we're going to move to bright pale yellow. This is a color that will appear like a white on top of this gold, even though when you compare this to bold titanium white, it's not any, it still looks like a dark color. But it gives us the ability to move into a bright reflective color and still have white as an option to grow into. I won't generally put white on a model until the very, very end. White should be your last choice for bringing a particular part of the model up to full volume, right? If you use it at this stage of the model, it's hard to bring other areas up to par with it because you already have the brightest color you can use, which is white, on the model, so nothing else will be able to compete, and you can't make that any brighter. You know, it's why we say you paint white without using white. I'm going to look at my brightest areas, which I've already defined, right? I already know where I want the most brightness, but again, you've seen me every time I start with edges. I'll start grabbing some of these edges across the top of the model here, where I know that my light is kind of directly applied to the surface. And I'll just kind of lightly use the side of the brush and find some of these edges. Right, so there we have instant shine on those edges. Now I'll go in and I've got a lot of areas defined here where I've got, you know, the shine across the cylinder of these eye shapes. And this is going to be like the least amount of paint we put on the model now, but it'll take us a lot longer to figure out where to put it, how to get it on there, because we really need to be careful not to overdo these bright colors. Otherwise, it blows out all the other colors we put on the model. all of the underpainting and all that stuff will just kind of be shot if we do too much brightness here. Right. We're putting so little paint on that now we've got to kind of really dive in and look at this at the granular level, because the biggest shine will come from the smallest little doot of paint. This is really where DEETS and DOOTS are important. And it doesn't take a lot of shine on that nostril to pull off the look we're going for. We need to start looking at the shape, like if I have a scratch here, right? That scratch would get highlighted. This little spot where a whisker would be coming out would get highlighted. And so we're really just looking at where I put all that brightness, like on the shape of the tooth here, and the brightest spot would be up towards the top, towards my light source, and I'll just kind of stipple that on there, just kind of poke a little bit of brightness around at the top there. Tooth has a scar or scratch in it, so I'll also put a little bit of brightness on the other side of that scratch, but that's really where I want the shine on the tooth. You can see it has a little nick right across the bottom, so I'll switch my brush direction up and I'll go across that nick, catch that little shine there. Right, now you might want to put a little doot right here. Again, pull a little line and then doot at the top so that I get the blend of the highlight going up the tooth, and then the dot at the top is where that shine ends. And that's the key. So then we just want to keep moving around the model, treating each of these little shapes that make up the whole piece in the same way. You'll notice that I generally start with an edge. We've talked about that. And then I'll build off that edge to create the shine, right? So I'll hit a particular area, find the edge that would be brightest, and then widen that edge across the surface or around the curvature to create more of a bold brightness to it if it's facing my light source, and less so if it's a line that retreats away from the light. That was such a small amount of paint. I want you guys to understand how zoomed in we are. And what I'm doing here is, when we say DEETS and DOOTS, we're not lying. These are, like I say all the time, it's the least amount of paint you'll put on the model that'll have the absolute largest impact. And then it's really just repetition of DOOTS and DEETS. It's those small pinpoint pricks of light that flow along an edge. And you just want to start with a less is more mentality, so that you do a small edge highlight, a small build out of that brightness with another little DEET or DOOT, and then take a look, step back from the model, take a look at it, say, is that bright enough? Does that give me the feel of light? If it doesn't, broaden your DEET and DOOT, put another one down there, stipple a little more, take that line a little longer, right? But start slow and build up, and you'll get there. So I'd like for you to get a really good picture of how this works across a lot of these different shapes this model has. So I'm going to turn up the music for a bit and just enjoy the show. We've been working on this non-metallic gold, and we started the journey with dark yellow green as a base. I like to use greens as a base for gold because it gives me kind of a weird cool temperature base, even though green is can play between cool and warm. It cools the gold yellowishness off, and also gives me kind of a cool tarnished look. Think like mossy. It's not wet and mossy, but it gives a neat tarnish to gold, even though gold tends to tarnish black and brown, not green. And then we worked in some dark purple in the shadows. My fixation with purple is true even with non-metallic gold. That gives me some nice, deep, reflective shadows that can be bring interest through the color of purple, but also bring the environment in. You can imagine like alien worlds would have different shadow colors cast, and so I like purple for that. And then after that, we went into orange oxide. Right next. The orange oxide gave us a nice warmth and depth for the gold that, again, brings more environment into it. And then the orange brown over the top of that was kind of the underpainting, if you will, for setting up the colors that would give me the nuanced shadows and midtones for all of the gold. If you want to punch in, we'll let them see how all of that plays. You can see the orange oxide in the shadow, the little bit of the purple, the greens playing there. So like I said, it just gives it the feeling that it's in a living world, as opposed to just being, a dark brown, a mid brown, a bright, yellow kind of a thing, where all of the colors are gold, but it forgets that the reflective metals will bring the colors from their environment in, even if they're not highly polished. You'll still have the reflected shadows and stuff from the world around you that play in here. So those colors come to life that way. After those, then it was just two other colors. It was bright yellow ochre. That gives the color of gold, the kind of yellowishness that I wanted, without it feeling like, 24 karat gold plated, cheap, dollar store jewelry. So I love a yellow that is a little bit muted. So the bright yellow ochre is a great way to do that. It's also a very big jump from the orange brown. So in value, we call it, the brightness difference between those two allows us to start moving into the reflective shine of metal. If you go into a stage in between this, it starts looking like it's just painted this color. You lose the reflectiveness of a surface like metal. See, this is where I start making my jump to brighter colors, is from that mid-tone orange brown to a brighter highlight of yellow ochre. And then eventually the same thing, we go to the bright pale yellow, which is the brightest reflection. This is indicative of the lighting color that's reflecting, so the sun, the light in the room, whatever it is. And again, that's a big jump from even our bright yellow ochre. So at those highlight steps is where you're going to have to assert your bravery and really start making jumps from darker colors to brighter colors without worrying about blending in between. And that's what gives people a lot of the headache in non-metallic, is that it won't read as a metal unless you have that disparity between bright and dark. You can even see it on the black armor, right? You can see that I've just got nice narrow shine lines that let you know it's a hard surface with some reflective quality to it, but not polished. It's dirty, worn, beaten. It doesn't have a big exposed bright area to it. Just nice little pinpoint shine that shows me that there is light on it. It does reflect the light back, but it's been worn. It's been in combat and seen its days. Whereas the gold is a little bit more polished, a little bit more royalty associated with it. So it gives me a nice offset between the two types of metals.